My name is Brack St. Clair, and I'm the controller for J&E Companies. We do subcontracting work, masonry, ICF, plaster, drywall, and waterproofing. We currently serve the DFW market primarily, and we have about 1,000 employees that work for us. When I was working for Trinity, we were utilizing the About Time software product, and WorkMax was right on the horizon, and I believe y'all released WorkMax in 2016 as well. And so one of the things that we did is we started looking into a time solution, and we were geared towards looking at About Time primarily, but then we saw that WorkMax offered the facial verification, and that part of it was automated to the point that we felt like that would be a better product for us to eliminate some of the human error and having to do the face verification through utilizing employees to perform that verification. If we were on paper timesheets or even a comparable system of electronic timekeeping, where there were tabs and just the amount of information that's coming in, there still wouldn't be that component of the facial recognition. And the GPS locating, also very important to our business, making sure that the people who are clocking in are at the right place at the right time. Having to perform that analysis outside of WorkMax, I can't imagine the amount of manpower that it would take to accomplish that. So WorkMax has helped us scale without having to add many employees to our payroll department, just to be able to process the information and ensure that people are doing what they said they're going to do. People don't have to be intentionally dishonest and still make mistakes. And what WorkMax allows us to do is to verify some of the details without having to track people down and ask them the question and have instances of phone calls and emails going back and forth or text messages where a lot of that time can be spent by the foreman. Instead of answering payroll questions, he can actually be focused on the job at hand and getting the production out of his men that he needs to get. And payroll can be focused on processing the payroll information, and they don't have a whole lot of follow-up questions that they need to be asking. WorkMax is more of an app on their phone, and growing up in today's society, if you have to learn how to use an app on your phone to do anything, and even to make a simple phone call is more of a struggle than just opening the phone and dialing the number, because there's options available there. And I think that the ease of use and the comfortability that people have with WorkMax is just from the mindset of growing up in a world where technology is expected. And so, but even some of the older people, they're adapting to that just because WorkMax is simple to use. There's not a lot of complexity to it. And I think that really helps with the adoption rate. So a lot of our employees have their phone set to the Spanish version of the phone for their operating system, and so having that setting available on WorkMax just allowed them to continue in that same experience, and they're not having to struggle through a translation process in order to get their work done and get clocked in. at the onset of implementing WorkMax, we were using paper time sheets, and the foreman was expected every week to turn those paper time sheets in, and which he did, and all of that worked, but it was a tedious process. And now that we were able to show them that, hey, you can get your employees clocked in in order to send the information to the office, all you have to do is synchronize the time. And that eliminated him from having to go back and remember who was actually on the job site on Monday, because he's frantically filling out this timesheet on Sunday evening so that he can get time processed for the week. So even with other timekeeping software where the information is stored on a server, if you don't have direct access to that server, then you can't see the full picture. And so some of the challenges would be that if a worker moved around to different job sites, as long as he was at the job site where he clocked in, he could see that information. But if he was on a different job site, he couldn't see the time that was worked at the previous job site. What the cloud implementation does is it expands that ability for visibility across all the job sites. You can see anything that you need to see regardless of where that location is. I think WorkMax has allowed us to rest easy at night, just from the perspective that we don't have to worry about if something happens to our office, we're not going to lose all the information from the guys, and we're still going to be able to get them processed. We're still going to be able to pay every one of our guys every single week, because all that information is stored in the cloud, and we don't have to rely on a natural event or something interrupting that process. So we're able to utilize WorkMax in ways that we could never really utilize, whether we were doing paper timesheets or an on-site server to keep up with those things. So our integration with Foundation and WorkMax is to the point where we enter an employee into Foundation. Once they hire on, that information gets translated to WorkMax, so we don't have to utilize two different points of entry on the information. We can utilize one point of entry, and then that information gets synchronized throughout. Same thing with projects. We enter a project into Foundation. That information translates over into WorkMax seamlessly. And on the back end of things, once time records are processed and batched, that gets exported to Foundation, and Foundation processes those time records, and the entire process is pretty seamless. WorkMax runs between 1 and 1.5 full-time employees per year is about what we pay. And I feel like 2 to 3 employees at the minimum would be required if we weren't utilizing a product like WorkMax. That ROI was evident through the very first year, and then as we bring on more employees, that requirement expands, but WorkMax doesn't expand exponentially along with it. So we have a little added cost instead of having to hire an entirely new person to take care of that line of business. The implementation process was pretty seamless. Getting the payroll department on board with not having to translate paper timesheets and foreman handwriting, that was a pretty easy sell. On the back end, with already having had experience with About Time, transitioning over to WorkMax was also a pretty easy sell for me. the owner of the company was very interested in the GPS tracking and the facial recognition features. From the perspective of upper management, the payroll department, and the support in the office, all of those factors, WorkMax was an easy sell to all of those entities. The harder sell was out in the field. And surprisingly enough, we actually had a few of the older foremen who adapted much quicker. Yeah. They adapted to the app versus having to do the paper timesheets. They saw the value in the electronic timekeeping over the having to write everything down and remember. Some of the younger ones were actually a little slower at adoption, but after the initial 6 months to a year of making it known that this was here to stay and this is how things were going to be moving forward, they bought in and started using it. And it's now gotten to the point where we can't even remember the last time that we did any training on WorkMax. We hire new foremen all the time, and I think the field and the culture of the company has just, okay, here's what you need to do, here's how you need to do it, and it's gotten to the point where it's not a person in the office telling them, here's what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. They have their counterparts out in the field who are explaining that information, and it's coming from the field itself rather than being an office directed. So I would recommend to anybody that's looking into transitioning from paper timesheets to electronic timekeeping that buy-in has to come from the top down. If the owner of the company is not invested in this as a solution, if this is answering questions that he's not asking, then the field is never going to implement it on the level where you're going to get an ROI on it. If someone were to ask me about what we were doing, how we overcame some of the challenges that they're currently experiencing, I would tell them that WorkMax is a great product for that. It deals with multiple facets. It's not just one problem that it answers. It solves several problems all at once. Being able to optimize the amount of time that your payroll department spends on processing the payroll each week. The accuracy that WorkMax brings to your timekeeping efforts. The information that you get out of WorkMax and are able to use that in processes that lead back to your estimating and to your project management, and allowing your owner and executive management to make decisions based on the information that they're getting out of that. All those problems get solved through WorkMax.